party down, location mysterious. Wanna rock this con like my man James Tiberius. Jesse and Marina, they're mad clever like the Negus. Gonna guide you through the scenes, beam from London to Las Vegas. Where to go, how to dress, when to sleep, who to see. Celebs not to miss, Sardis Wong and SMG. Star Trek into awesome, build some memories at last. Set the proper course, the Shore Leave Podcast. Boom.
Welcome, everyone, to the 56th episode of Shore Leave, your Star Trek Convention Community Podcast. I'm Jesse Okendo, your host, and with me, as always, is the wonderful con traveler, Marina.
Hi, Jesse. Hello, everyone. Great to be back recording. I mean, we're kind of, the convention season keeps on rolling, so we got stuff to talk about.
Oh, yeah, it's, well, you've been busy. I've been slacking off, but we got enough to talk about today, don't we?
Absolutely. So, as everybody knows, Shore Leave is part of the Triquetra Transmissions Network, and if you enjoy what we do here on Shore Leave or any other of our sister shows on Triquetra Transmissions, please consider joining our Patreon. You can go directly to patreon.com/the Triquetra Transmissions or visit our network webpage, which is www.thetriquetratransmissions.com, and click on the Patreon link there. And, becoming a Patreon will give you access to unedited and early release episodes. You'll hear all our little mess ups and little discussions outside of the actual release. Often other bonus material, invitations to regular Patreon hangouts with the hosts and fellow patrons. And we'd like to thank all of existing patrons for your support. Thank you very much. So, Jesse, let's talk about what we're going to be talking about.
Well, I'm jealous because we get to talk about stuff you did, and I just got to see it via pictures. But we want to talk about New York City Comic-Con, and there is a lot to peel there. Especially, I saw a lot of good stuff about Star Trek Discovery, Picard, and all that stuff. So I'm looking forward to hear from that. And then I think, Marina, you brought a guest on, didn't you?
Yes, and it is a returning guest and one of our favorite guests, actually. The fellow STLV vet and cosplayer extraordinaire, Michael Nguyen. Mike, welcome back.
Woo!
Hey, Marina, Jesse, thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure to hang out and chat with you guys. I feel like when we do these are actually the longer conversations we get to have, even though we get to see each other in Vegas every year.
Exactly. It's kind of mind-blowing that we, you and I actually met in Vegas, even though we're both local to New York.
Yeah, that's how it goes. I have to go to Vegas to find people from New York to hang out with back in New York.
I met you in Vegas, and then you introduced me to people in my hometown when I was living in Oklahoma. So Vegas appears to be the nexus. So happy that you can join us, and I'm happy to bring you back because, I think you bring a lot into this. I've been tempted to go to New York City Comic-Con, but I'm still haven't pulled the plug on that. So maybe you guys will talk me into it.
Yeah, well, it's one of those, those who are on the convention circuit know that this is actually one of two what they call tentpole events, the other one being San Diego, of course. They're basically industry events when we get exposures and trailers premiering and all the, stars showing up, which don't necessarily actually do anything that you would think about, convention, photo ops, autographs, or the sort of thing. But you do get, an introduction to brand new things coming in pop culture. So, San Diego is middle of the summer, and then once the fall starts, we get New York Comic Con. And after that, the convention season actually tends to wind down. I mean, we still have a couple of, sort of mid-size Comic Cons happening until probably, November, maybe early December, and then that's it. And then we all can rest until next year rolls in.
Oh, yeah.
So as far as conventions go, Mike, was this your last convention for the year, or you still have something else happening?
I always think I know that, this is it. There's no other, I'm only doing this convention and Star Trek, and then there's always one more that pops up and somebody tells me about it, and I'm like, well, tell me more about that. So they just keep getting added. But locally, there's two small ones, the New York WinterCon and the Big Apple Comic Con, that are still before January. So, I might be at that, but that's probably all for the year.
Yeah, well, I just literally came back, well, today's Monday, so as we're recording this, so that would be yesterday for me. I just came back from Ace Comic Con Midwest, which turned out to be a very, very exciting experience. Let's put it this way. I got to meet Chris Hemsworth. And
Was
then
that your first time?
for ACE, yes. I've been aware of their Seattle convention because they normally get pretty tremendous guest lists, like, well, Marvel across the board, basically. If you want to meet somebody who was in the Marvel movies, that, definitely look into ACE Comic-Con. And as far as I know, they have 3 locations. Well, now I know that they have 3 locations, one in Seattle, one in Phoenix, and one in Chicago. And I found out very late in the game, so I'm actually consider myself extremely lucky that I managed to get the tickets because everything sold out. Literally, I mean, they still had general admissions available, but as far as photo op tickets, gone. VIP tickets, gone. Autograph tickets, gone. So it was like there was a lot of resales and swaps going on as schedule became available. But swinging back, I still have Rhode Island Comic Con to go, and then I guess I'll be done for the year until the cruise next year.
Yeah.
But as far
That's
as
my next one, the
yes.
cruise I'm looking forward to, and then I skipped Calgary Fan Expo last year, but I'm probably going to go this year again. But that's like in April, which is right after the cruise. So I'll be your kind of worn out when when April comes along next year.
I literally just like put pictures, like I finally put up all my pictures from New York Comic Con on Facebook, and then I saw pictures of people who I had just met at New York Comic Con posting pictures from ACE, and I was just like, good Lord, like I just don't think I'd have the energy to be able to do that. But
yeah, what's more, I did it like I normally do Comic Cons. For me, one day is normally enough. So it's literally, like almost like a military operation, in and out. It has to be very precise because obviously if a plane is late somewhere, I'd be, a schedule nightmare.
But I tried to keep up with Marina on the 50th. I remember this year because I said, I'm going to go to every Star Trek convention there is on the 50th anniversary. And I saw Marina at every single one.
No, I did not do Dallas and I did not do San Francisco.
Oh, well.
But otherwise, yes.
It seemed like you were there. And I was just like,
in spirit.
I think Marina and I were like, she was one ahead, or by the time we were done, it was actually really fun. But I don't think I can do that again. I'm too tired.
Well, and going back to the discussion as far as like New York Comic Con is a class of its own. This is not.
Yeah.
A lot of times people are like, well, how does this compare? I actually saw something, speaking of ACE versus New York Comic Con. I saw a discussion in one of the fan groups saying like, well, I just did New York Comic Con and this and that. I'm like, you know what? This is actually apples and oranges, even though they're both Comic-Con events. It's completely different. It's so overwhelming in terms of the sheer size and everything, and the crowds and the panels, and completely something else. So this year, New York Comic Con, let's talk about this. Just overall vibe. Like for you, was it, a positive experience all throughout? How does it compare with previous years?
Well, I think, one way to compare it to other conventions is, if you go to Vegas, you don't have to make plans to see anyone because you're going to run into everyone at some point. For the most part, you run into all of your friends. I feel like at New York Comic Con, if you do not make specific plans, it is unlikely that you will run into people. You'll run into people that but I literally had a list of friends of mine that come to town just for this convention, and we tried to connect, and like we just never saw each other all 4 days. So that's kind of an anecdotal way of explaining how big it is, and then just numbers wise, I think it's like 200,000, right?
I don't have any official numbers for the last 2 years. I think the last sort of like official one that was posted was 180,000 in 2016. So, and that year it was actually more than San Diego had. So that's saying something. Yeah. And just overall, I I always get very excited when I go to New York Comic Con, precisely because it is a unique experience in many, many ways. And then once I actually get there, I suddenly remember vividly reminded just how uncomfortable it can get when you are walking in crowds of this size, and especially right now because they did remove the that northern annex building, and the construction is full speed ahead. They already have probably about 5-6 stories worth of steel standing on the 37th Street side, so it feels tighter because they had to shift things around and rearrange the way the spaces are. The artist alley is now in a completely different location, and whatever was there before had to obviously go elsewhere. And of course, just generally, the convention is so big that a lot of the like industry panels can no longer even fit in Javits. For the past 4 or 5 years,
Oh yeah.
so we've had this stuff happening elsewhere, like the Hulu Theater at Madison Square Garden or the Hammerstein Center on 34th Street, and I think there's like 2 other smallish areas elsewhere on the west side that they use for the programming. So it's kind of. I heard rumbling saying that it's more people, so it did feel exhausting in that regard, that it just the noise and the movement, and I'm sure it can get extremely overwhelming. So for those people who are sensitive to this sort of thing, you have to be very careful and plan.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to drive off folks who might not prefer the big crowds. I mean, there is definitely no way to avoid, a crowd kind of lining up and going in, because there's always, a line and you have to go through security and check in. But once you're in, like, if you don't want to do any of that stuff that's in the big con floor, I mean, there are pockets of places where you can hang out, like the cosplay tunnel area is this kind of outdoor area where like all the photographers, all the cosplayers hang out, but it's big, it's wide open space, and it's right next to where the food trucks are. So you could literally like bring your own folding chair and just hang out there the whole day and meet lots of cosplayers and enjoy yourself. And not feel like claustrophobic.
What's more, I have to add is that there's so much information now available, and they do add to it every single year. So planning ahead does help. They do have quiet areas. They have maps all over. You have the printed map in the schedule. You have the map available through the app. You have the map. You can go online. There will be a map there, so you can actually. And you have like if you do plan to see specific vendors, and you're intimidated by the sheer size of the vendor hall. I mean, it's kind of small words to describe how big this. It's basically the entirety of Javits. Like 90% of Javits is occupied by the vendors. You can look up the booth numbers, mark them on the map, and actually create like little route. Route the areas how you can get there the quickest, so you can avoid getting stuck in foot traffic. It was like literally traffic with a capital T. I was walking through one of them. Everybody was moving like Goombas in that movie, like tiny little steps, because too much people moving in all the directions, basically.
So
HBO had a lounge this year, though.
Oh, well, that's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was in the basement level. It was actually pretty impressive. Like leather couches. They had like a photo op thing that you could do. And I mean, I only went in there once, but the time that I went in there, it looked like if you wanted to find a seat to sit down, you could find one. So there were little places where you could hang out.
So one of the things that I saw you guys dealing with was, well, Marina, I saw you like you were in line like a long time to get to like the main something or other. And how is like, like Vegas, you have like your guaranteed seating and all that. How do you deal with that? Like it's, I feel like it's Disney World. Like you go and if you don't get the fast pass, you're just going to be in line all day. So that's
like the DMV.
Yeah, it's exactly like that. You have to plan for that. So for instance, speaking of main stage, I happen to let me back up very quickly to explain what this is. What New York Comic Con does right now is about 50% of sitting, regardless which panel it is. Is it on the main stage within Javits? Is it in Hulu? Is it in Hammerstein? 50% of the seats are actually they literally put on a lottery, and you can, once you're fan verified and you have your tickets, you can participate in this, and you can potentially win a seat at a panel. And then if you show up 30 minutes before the panel starts, you literally are pretty much guaranteed a spot, which is a fantastic thing. The caveat, of course, is that it's still first come first serve, and if you are late, you're missing the spot, and on and on. So it's it is a game. So it just so happened that this year I won my second choice panel. I really wanted to be guaranteed a spot in the Star Trek one, but we'll talk about that separately. But I won a different one, which was a wonderful panel with Adam Savage from Mythbusters. So that was the first time I actually had an experience at New York Comic Con, having going to a main stage panel, which basically, I showed up on time. There was already an enormous line of people standing, and that was it. I got in and I was pretty much sitting like roughly in the middle. It's not a very big space. I don't know how many people sit there. I'm going to estimate somewhere along maybe 3.5, maybe 4,000 people. Those who have attended the Star Trek Mission New York, that's exactly what they used as the main theater, same location. I kind of, for some reason in my head, I thought that maybe they used a smaller space because Star Trek Mission was, well, it was tiny by comparison to New York Comic Con. But no, that's the actual main event space that the Javits Center has. So yeah, it was standing. Last year, same thing. I went for a panel, not main stage, was one of those secondary halls, and for that one, because they do not clear between the panels, I ended up actually standing for like 2.5 hours. But
wow.
I actually managed to get in. But once they run out of capacity, that's it. You know, people are turned away, even though you were standing there waiting from the get-go. So I don't know, Mike, do you have any experience with any of the panels?
Well, I only went to one. I mean, I'll be honest, at New York Comic Con, in general, I really don't, I mean, in general, I don't go to a lot of panels, but, except like I'm very specific. Usually I have like a whole list of panels. I'll put it that way. I have the intention to go to every panel. Mm-hmm. And then like usually what happens is like I'm not even awake yet and it's already over. But I did go to the Orville panel this year, which I really enjoyed. Once you're in, the nice thing in that I think it's the main hall there. The nice thing is that they actually serve beer and pretzels and some food in the back.
Nice.
So yeah, so once you're in, you can put your feet up, and have a beer and watch the panel. I mean, I don't ever feel the need like I have to be in the front. So if I sit closer to the back, I'm closer to the beer and I'm closer to the bathroom. Those are two important things for me. So
I saw Marina post and she said, I got my seat. I'll be here for 4 hours. I'm like, whoa.
Oh, yeah.
That was a different one. That was the Hulu Theater because, again, this was the Star Trek Universe panel, which was an industry level panel. And I will actually let's have this as a separate discussion as far as Trek specific events at New York Comic Con this year, because this was actually an interesting experience. Definitely a highlight of this year's convention season for me, because content wise, I don't think I've experienced something that exciting. Just as a general thing, like, do you normally approach your New York Comic Con specifically experience the same way? Do you kind of plan things around? I mean, I know in your case you also cosplay a lot, so that kind of probably plays into your planning as far as how the convention's going to go.
Well, I think a big difference between Vegas and New York Comic Con is that people have to understand that obviously it's not a hotel convention, but also what that means in terms of like how much you can buy, carry, and cosplay. So like I used to do like maybe sometimes I do 2 cosplays in a day. I'd bring a bag, I'd check it in and then take it out when I need it. I don't want inconvenience, as much as I can. So now I just kind of do one and, kind of take it easy. And like I said, I do have a list of things that I want to do, but New York Comic Con for me is more about interacting with cosplayers, meeting people, and really just kind of also making some connections with people within industry. So, I got to meet some folks from CBS marketing, from Amazon Entertainment marketing, related to kind of podcast stuff. And even that, I mean, for a lot of things, whether it's making friends or it's building professional connections, New York Comic Con is a place where you kind of initiate that. And you're going to like build that friendship, build that professional relationship like later down the road. But New York Comic Con is so busy and there's so many people that, it's really a lot of hi and hello kind of stuff versus like Vegas where, you can go and sit down and have a chat with someone for a half hour.
Yeah. Did you do all 4 days this year?
I did. Yeah, I did.
Oh my God.
I usually got there around like 12 p.m., 1 p.m. And I stay till the end. So like I stay until 8 o'clock sometimes, 8:30. And then usually I'll go like to dinner or drinks or an after party with some friends.
Yeah, I don't think I would have been able to actually manage 4 days. Even with the late start, I typically only do Saturday. This year I was lucky enough to do both Saturday and Sunday, specifically because I was planning, unusually for me, to do panels. So my entire Saturday is basically dedicated to panel-like events. And then Sunday I did my usual, basically going through all the vendors and checking out all the collectibles and T-shirts and what have you, and bumping into people and saying hello. And I actually didn't manage to do everything I planned because at some point, Well, my body basically gave up.
Yeah, that happens.
Yeah.
I didn't make it through the whole vendor's room. I missed like probably about half of it. So
So I know you guys, like Michael said, it's not like hotel based, so you kind of just have to plan for the day. But like, what's the logistics around like the New York away team? You guys, like, I remember O'Looney's being like a center of anything you do. So
oh yeah, it still
how's
is.
that? What's the logistics of that after hours? Is it close? Is it far? Because you know, I've only been there a couple times, so I took a cab, and I don't know.
Javits is right on the bank, so it's between 34th and 37th on 12th Avenue, right? Is it 12th or 11th Avenue?
Right.
12th Avenue, yeah. And the Looney's is on 45th, right next by Times Square. So
Yeah.
if you're walking, it's
walk.
quite a bit of a walk. Yeah. But it's certainly worth it because it's an established spot. So there is always a traditional Sunday night after con party, the one that I actually didn't manage to make it to this year, even though that was my plan. But I honestly could barely walk. I was going through the artist alley. One of my friends recommended I stop by a booth, and I got basically like a horrible spasm. I'm like, I guess my convention day is over because I won't be able to walk the next day.
Yeah, I mean, the great thing with the Loonies is that it's right. I mean, well, right in Times Square. I mean, I know there's a lot of tourists, but it's kind of really that center point, so that like if you are still going east because you have to get to Long Island, you got to pass by there anyway. And if you're going to go, you know, up into northern New York and you need to use the Metro North, you're going to go through there anyway. So that's a good part. And there's also a bunch of other kind of nice small places to kind of hang out and get something to eat or have a beer. Scallywags is right nearby, and a bunch of us gathered there. So logistics-wise, most people are taking the train in, you know, the subway. I really don't know many people who are driving, and if you are, you need to be prepared to pay a lot for parking for the day.
Yeah.
So what's the highlight for you guys each? Like as an outsider looking in, like I live through you guys through Facebook. So, but like Marina, I know we're going to talk about the Star Trek stuff, which was my highlight. Just like I felt like I was there kind of thing because I did the live stream for some of that. But like for you guys as con goers, like what keeps you coming back, especially to this one?
Well, generally speaking, it's just, like I said, it's in class of its own. That you don't get this type of convention experience pretty much, I don't think, anywhere. I mean, similar stuff. Every convention has the vendor hall. Every convention has artist alley, etc. And then there's just the variations. Some are more towards the actual comics. Others are more specific to various genres. Others are heavy, kind of like mixing in real science. And New York is just it's enormous, and you do get exposure to you know, this sort of announcements. Like this year we did have amazing Star Trek news coming out of New York that, you know, basically they were on the same level as San Diego. I mean, we got certain things being announced that's it. That's the brand new piece of news coming out of New York.
Yeah, so that was like what I noticed, because I, you know, from knowing you guys for, you know, the years I've known you, this is kind of the first time, am I wrong? This is kind of the first time where New York Comic Con became kind of the seed of stuff that we didn't know yet, especially in Star Trek.
No, actually, I would say that it started in 2017, right after we got the premiere of Discovery, and New York Comic Con was extremely Trek friendly that year. I mean, it was just the first time I was like, oh, you know, finally Star Trek kind of like becomes this sort of the big news type of event. You know, we got the panel at Hulu, and there was Palifest was doing stuff, and the stars were in, and there were interviews and, you know, like news coming out. CBS basically hung the banners all over the place. So the visibility of Star Trek, that was the first time I was like, oh my goodness, you know, the franchise literally is coming alive. It was somewhat similar, but we didn't get actually anything last year sort of on the same level when I was like, oh, brand new stuff is happening. This year, it was very much so. Same thing. Banners are all over the place. Everybody knew that this enormous Star Trek universe panel was coming. So New York Comic Con, again, very Trek friendly, increased presence of Star Trek, you know, in all its incarnations. I mean, they had, you know, you will literally see a little bit of anything regardless of which series we're talking about among the collectibles and the t-shirts and people wearing cosplay. So in that regard, New York Comic Con was a great place to be at this year, if extremely exhausting, but exhilarating.
And
Yeah.
so I know that the Hulu theaters where all that stuff happened with the Star Trek stuff. It was like one night after the other, right?
Yes, it's a side venue right by Madison Square Garden. So actually, you use the same entrance as Madison Square Garden. As far as I know, it's probably, what's the capacity? Somebody actually told me the exact number, and unfortunately, it skips my mind. It's somewhere in the vicinity of 5,000 people. So it's sizable. It's a lot of people. As far as I know, they changed the typical schedule. Normally, every year, well, the one franchise that has enormous exposure at New York Comic Con is The Walking Dead. And they would normally have their industry panel at the end of the day, like around 4 p.m. or 5 p.m. So because they're not clearing between panels, the folks who want to attend would actually show up early in the morning and sit there through the entire day to make sure that they actually catch the panel. So that's actually one of the reasons exactly that I was never even daring to like, well, let me go and check out that big Star Trek, whatever is going on over there in Hulu. No, I would just spend the entire day hanging out with my friends and checking stuff out in Javits, because that's also very time consuming. And this year, as I mentioned earlier, that was my plan. I was dead set that I'm going because they changed the schedule arrangement. Walking Dead was very first panel of the day. And the second one.
Oh, you went to that?
Yes. So I left my house at 6:30 a.m. in the morning to make sure that I was there.
I was still sleeping.
Yes, I'm sure a lot of people, because the roads were very empty. Most people were behaving reasonably, unlike myself. And I got there. There was already probably, I don't know, maybe 100 people standing by the entrance. They had separate ones for ADA and able-bodied folks. So I don't know, maybe total will be somewhere in the vicinity of 200 probably, actually. And that's it. I stood there. They got us in. And I sat there for 2 hours listening to The Walking Dead. Details, informations, and I mean, there were thankfully at least actors that I recognized, so it was kind of fun to see them on stage live. And I have to say, interestingly enough, the theater was not full. I could see probably maybe, I don't know, 50, 70 seats, granted out in the back, but still the place was not full. And I'm like, well, this is interesting. And then, of course, things kind of started to turn into a complete zoo as, you know, time creeped closer to 1 p.m. when Star Trek was supposed to start. And people shuffling about, somebody's leaving, new people arriving, people trying to switch to better seats. And for a while, I was playing. I'm like, well, maybe I can make a move and move up to, like, I don't know, third row or something. No, at some point, I'm like, you know what?
And you're good at that, by the way.
Yeah,
you're good at that. And you bring everyone with you, too. You're always like, I'm moving up to the front. I got 2 seats up here.
I didn't dare move a muscle. I'm like, I'm staying at this tiny little seat, incidentally. If anybody's listening, whoever's running Hulu Theater has something to do with the maintenance, oh my goodness, the seats are so uncomfortable. And meanwhile, I was there just for basically 4 hours. Those people who were in practice of sitting there the entire day to catch their panels, I don't know how they managed to work out. They're in comfortable seats. But that's beside the point. I mean, the excitement was certainly the big payoff, because the place was packed. The place was packed. I think that was probably, I mean, I don't know how the other panels went, obviously, because I left after Star Trek. So for all I know, maybe Outlander was just as packed and pumping and what have you. But the Star Trek panel was certainly completely, I mean, the sheer excitement, it was palpable. I mean, you can feel how excited everyone was. And then, so they did the Discovery portion first. And I'm not going to recap, because all of the wonderful interviews and recaps and reviews and everything is available, so people can check out on trackmovie.com or on Trackcore. So all that stuff is there. And then, of course, Picard portion came on, and at that point, I mean, they showed the trailer. People literally screamed, not like woohoo, or anything, just going like that, you know.
Now, yeah, I will tell you that looking at so I don't know there were like 2 or 3 different live streams going at this time, and I was I don't know which one I was watching, but like you could feel the excitement like in my living room when I was watching this, because I was like, holy crap.
Yeah.
I've seen live streams before, but I've never felt like part of it like it was for that. And it just seems like they did really well at the way they did it. So Discovery, yeah, but you know, they're already like 2 seasons in, right? So this is just what's going on next season. But I think it did to put Discovery first and then Picard instead of the other way around. What surprised me is how much new content we got in one day, in a matter of a couple hours, right? It was amazing.
Whoever organized everything did a phenomenal job, because everything was done. Like you think back to it, like the way certain things were talked about and announced, like boom, Alex Kurtzman announces that, the first short track is actually on. And the way it was like, it was like timed perfectly, the way this stuff was being fed to the people.
It was so let me tell you. So I was online on my WhatsApp with my group, and then, I've got friends from all over. So like my friends in the UK were on WhatsApp, and we were kind of following everything. And like, we were like, it's available in the UK. No, it's available here. And we're all trying to figure out where this stuff is that's coming out. And it was just amazing because, Marina, you're right. The minute they said, Alex Kurtzman says that the new short track is on, that's when it popped up on CBS All Access. That's when it popped up on Amazon for the UK. It was just like, I don't know how they timed it so well, but they had to have some kind of organization, because it was
absolutely.
It was amazing.
The moment the trailer
showed up,
the moment the trailer showed up, it was immediately, like I had the phone on so I can, like do everything at the same time, post pictures and everything. And Patrick Stewart's Facebook account, boom, posted the trailer. So it was like a ballet, everything was moving precisely that way. So it was a tremendous experience. So all in all, Saturday was, I have no idea what was going on in Javits, to be honest. I did stop by for the main stage panel, but that was it, because the entire morning and part of afternoon was taken up in Hulu. I stopped by for the main stage panel with Adam Savage, and then I don't know. I'm like, well, I still have a little bit of time before my evening event, which was Pally Fest panel. So I thought I might check out something in the Artist Alley, and I realized, you know what, I'm actually running out of time. I had to stop by the official store for the Pizza Rat Pin, which is a whole separate story. But I have to go because Pally Fest is, the Pally Center is 5th Avenue and 52nd, I think.
And so that was at 7, I think, right?
Yeah, and that was like another high point, because it's a much smaller venue, and you can see everything and hear everything perfectly. You can submit your questions that will be asked by the host. So I've done the Pally Fest in 2017. I was expecting this one to be just as good, and it was.
So, can you tell me, so for us who don't know, so Paley Fest, is that like the venue name, or is that something else that happens in conjunction? Because that kind of confused me as to what that really was.
It's separate from the con, so it's separate from the con. Paley Center, yeah.
But they always time. They certainly time the Star Trek specific events specifically for New York Comic Con, because it actually basically guarantees you that there will be attendance. Pally Fest itself, there's actually the full name is Pally Center for Media. So television and movies, and you get wonderful. It's like witnessing a live interview. That's what this is, because
I think only like 100 people, right?
150. It's a very, very small space, but it's perfect in many ways, because like I said, you get you can stand outside at the door. You can't even call it a stage door, because it's a side door right next to the main entrance, and you can meet anyone, shake hands, ask for a selfie, ask for an autograph. So it's a nice sort of. I mean, you still get wonderful. Not that they would necessarily release something new, because that already happens at New York Comic Con, but it's still a very nice discussion, and certainly was this year. And then of course afterwards you do have some access to the talent, which was very nice.
Yeah, that's a great center. I mean, they did an event for the 50th anniversary of Star Trek there, and a friend of ours, David Bushman, just does a great job of curating, things there. And they're so friendly. The actors are very happy to take a picture with you. And it's a small venue, like you said. So I think like 150 people. It's a nice little small kind of more personal experience, I guess.
Yeah, and it's another great thing about it, because it's a historical entity. Originally, this was the Museum of Television and Radio, and then it got renamed into Pally Center for Media. And there's two of them. There's New York and Los Angeles, and every year they do a fest. So Pally Center New York Fest, Pally Center Los Angeles Fest, and you get a lineup usually, but I don't know, what, 6, 8 different television entities. So, like this year, I think they had the 20th anniversary of West Wing, Blackish. Oh, I would have to actually open their website and see. But there was probably about like 6 or 7 where you have a live interview going on stage talking about that particular television show. And
so is it ticketed separately?
yes, yeah.
It is, yeah. It's a completely separate event. But every time I've gone, it's totally worth it. I mean, I think when they had the Discovery actors there, I think I was like in the second row or something like that. And the other thing that I liked was, if you want to ask a question, you write it down, they pass it up to the front, and they actually have, I think he is a anchor for CBS. I think they usually have a guy who's an anchor for CBS who asks the question. So it's really professional, and yet it's also personal, and it's just really well managed.
Yes,
that's awesome. I'm gonna.
It's as a whole package for a day, so it made like nonstop track. At least, I mean, for me, I barely got to do anything that was actually like conventional, like meaning going through vendors or anything like that. It was just all, and then the next day, thankfully, I got to actually check out things, and because I was curious to see some of the what exclusives will be there, that sort of thing. Mike, as far as which day was the Orville panel?
That was Sunday. Yeah,
Sunday.
That was the last day. Yeah, so that was the only panel I went to. It was, and again, it wasn't out of a lack of interest. I want to be at everything, but it's just to be able to be one place and then still do interviews for the podcast and still connect with people. I just, that was the only one I got to, but it was great.
Yeah. Well, I went with my best friend from college and, his brother, who's also happens to be my friend. The three of us usually just do this outing where we go and check out what the convention has to offer. This year in particularly, we basically got separated on at least 3 different occasions. And we kept messaging each other like, let's meet up by this and that booth. And then it would take forever to actually get there. And something else would come up and, he would say, well, I really want to go and check out this artist. So let's move it up by, I don't know, 30, 40 minutes and let's meet up elsewhere because the crowds are getting really, really bad off the floor.
Oh, man.
So yeah, it's like you mentioned, it was impossible. It's like you almost have to, even though we came together, it's like, well, yeah, let's schedule a meeting somewhere on the floor because otherwise we're completely lost to each other.
And it's just the nature of the convention. Like, one thing that I've learned is, you go there with the best of intentions to meet people, and you can set up times to meet, but like you may not have accounted for the crowd, and moving through that crowd takes time. So you are not going to be able to move from one place to the other in 5 minutes or less. Like that's just probably not going to happen. So I don't ever take it personally. If I plan to meet someone, we have every intention of doing it, and sometimes we don't. And then I remind myself, we can hang out other times outside of the convention. It doesn't have to be only here. Yeah. And that's where O'Looney's comes in. So
how did you, so I saw you guys, Michael, I think I saw you, were you organizing a couple of like the group photos, like, and stuff like that? How does that work with that kind of environment?
Well, so there's, so I helped organize 2 small Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel, shoots, and that was through a Facebook group. The Carol Cosplay Corps. And then we always do a Star Trek Sunday. Like that's been tradition since I think 2010 or 2011. And we kind of do that because sometimes, your Star Trek costumes, especially the uniforms, are just kind of a little bit more easier to manage. And Sunday's kind of like a casual day. And every year we kind of struggle to figure out where's the best place to do the picture because as Marina said, the center is constantly under construction. So the place that you did a photo shoot one year may not be available the next year. But it just happened that 2 of our friends, Johnny Martin, who of course.
Oh, yep.
Yep, your friend from high school, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so he and John Stigneri, who does a lot of our group pictures, met with some of the folks from CBS Interactive, and they had the Star Trek Transporter Experience display there. And, they told him about our group and our annual picture and introduced me, and we made that connection. And so the CBS marketing folks basically helped us on Sunday, basically to kind of pause the exhibit so that we could do this picture. And I think we had like 40 people there. Yeah, it was a lot of folks.
I don't know how it fits because it's just such a tiny little square where they have like literally imagine a square and like two sides of it is the actual experience and then the remaining corner is occupied with like a tiny little like exhibit. I mean, they had 3 or 4 glass cases with minutia from the upcoming, like from Discovery and from Picard. And somehow we managed. I mean, well, we have to give a shout out to Lawrence, who basically is like, okay, all the tall people in the back, all the short people in the front.
Lawrence, Max, and then John, who were the photographers. And I mean, I was kind of trying to make sure we got every last person who was in costume like through the right line. We only have a few minutes to do this, and those guys were just like, hey, like we got everything from behind the camera, like you just go be in the picture now. So if it wasn't for them, it wouldn't have happened. But the cool thing was literally within minutes of us taking that picture, the Star Trek Twitter account tweeted our group picture like right within a few minutes of us taking it.
Oh, that's awesome.
That was so exciting to see. All of a sudden it just popped out. I'm like, oh my goodness. That's us.
And so like when you're not there, you feel like like a star because you're like, I know those people. Like, and Michael, I saw one of your cosplays show up somewhere that wasn't even Star Trek related. Like, it was like, here's what we saw at New York City Comic-Con, and I think you were with Captain Marvel at some point.
It was Board Panda.
yeah,
that was awesome.
And I thought
Sarah.
But I do want to ask you guys. So, I was jealous anyway, but that Star Trek transporter experience, can you guys tell me what that, I mean, I've never seen anything like it. It was like a huge, I don't even know how to explain it. When you see it online, it's like you're in this big box and you look like you're transporting. It's just.
That's literally what it is. It's a big box and you're surrounded by videos. Is it video screens, I guess, or projector screens?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's video screens, and they tell you, is like, make sure you stand here because then on the video it looks like you're more or less, central, and it does have that effect, like, oh, person beamed somewhere. But it's the same. They had the same thing in San Diego, and it's fantastic to see that they brought it to New York Comic Con, and they also brought those exclusive pins that were created by
the visitor pins, from Picard.
It was, I think, Thursday was the Picard, Friday was the visitor, and then Saturday was Picard, and then they actually ran out of them, and Sunday was visitor, and visitor was the only one that I wanted so badly, and so that was my probably second question when my friends and I just accidentally, we just so happened that we entered the center right on that side where the transporter experience was. And so I asked, like, well, how many people, how long is it going to take? So that was actually the first thing that I did on Sunday morning before the crowd showed up. And the second was what kind of pins they're giving away. And it was, the visitor, and yay, score.
So logistically, so like if I were going, like you guys, like, you just go from home. You don't stay at a hotel nearby, right?
Mm-hmm.
But, honestly, if money was not an issue and budget, and, I had nothing else to spend time or money on in my life, if I could stay at a hotel or, I guess I could do that, but that would probably be the most ideal situation just because instead of, it's kind of like, that's why that conversation of the Gold Coast versus the Rio is just kind of so hilarious to me, is because, for so many other people who go to New York Comic Con, they can have anything from like a half hour to an hour or even an hour and a half commute, in and out every day for 4 days. So sometimes that's why that conversation is funny to me. Like, it's like, oh, like the Rio or the Gold Coast, it's so far. It's like Long Island is far, Connecticut is far, but
if I were to go, I would just stay with family because, like, I grew up in Elizabeth, which is just a train stop away, and so like that. Yeah. But even then, like, it was one train stop when I was a kid, like 30 years ago. But like now, I'm sure with all the craziness, it probably takes an hour to get from one place to another. So.
Yeah. And even if you are in the closest hotel in to Javits Center, it's still quite a bit of walk because there's nothing that's attached to the center. There's nothing that's right adjacent to the center. The center is just there, and you have, all those brand new commercial office buildings going up nearby, and just the that giant 12th Avenue that's pretty wide with nothing there. It's not like, you have to go and walk, and I don't know, what's the closest hotel? Maybe a 15-minute walk, 20-minute walk, something like that.
Yeah, and I mean, there are some other things to check out, like the High Line. There's that brilliant new staircase. What is that called? What do they call that? I forgot. The Vessel.
Yeah.
The Vessel.
The Vessel, that's
it's like
it,
this
yes.
architect art thing that's insanely beautiful.
Generally speaking, I mean, given that this is a huge convention in a very huge city, if for those people who are coming from afar, it does certainly make sense to make an experience out of it outside of convention as well. If you other days, couple of days before or couple of days after, so you can actually check out the museums and everything. That goes without saying. That's like, we can dedicate like an entire day of discussion what you can possibly do in New York City.
Yeah, and so like, do they have anything like so in Vegas, we have those like karaoke nights sponsored by the convention and like the gold dinner and all that stuff. Do they do anything like that, or is it all fan sponsored after?
Well, the convention doesn't. I mean, there are things going. I think there's an official karaoke kickoff party, but so they're limited. I think they do a few things, but there's so much other stuff. Like, you're not going to be able to do all of it. So like, we do our party on Sunday night, but our friend Lawrence did the cosplay cabaret, which is where people get into costume and sing songs, and they've changed the words into like nerd related, Superman, Firefly. So that was Thursday night, but it was like Saturday night. There were like 3 parties going on. There was Sonic Boombox. There was I went to Geek Girls Brunch Club does a fangirls night. All men and women, of course, are welcome, but
great thing that you brought this up, because I would love to hear about that. I've heard about this party and I've tried to attend a couple of times, but by the time Saturday night comes around, I'm falling. I'm dead on my sleep. Sorry, I'm on my feet because I'm so tired. So if you can talk about that one a little bit, because that seems to be now a feature that this is not. They've done it for several years now.
Yeah, they do. They do that one. They also do a holiday party, and basically they have a DJ. They got drink specials. We were celebrating a birthday, so they had cake for everyone. And 3 of our friends from Star Trek Vegas, who I just met this year, came. So we got to hang out for a little bit. It was just kind of fun. It's usually a smaller environment, and the nice thing was, they had one room which was for dancing and DJ, and then they had another room whereas if you just want to like sit down and have dinner, like you can do that too and just have a conversation. So it was nice that they had kind of both things, because I think oftentimes con goers, you're trying to decide, like I want to go to dinner, but I also want to go to this party. So it was nice that they had that. It is a good time.
Yeah. I know that there's several I'm not even sure how people find out about them. So I literally heard about these parties because one of my friends posted about it. There are after parties that are also organized by, well, in one case, for instance, there was an HBO's Watchmen New York Comic Con after party. There was something called Heroes After Dark New York Comic Con party that was sponsored by Wendy's. And it had sort of like this Game of Thrones / Halloween thing. I mean, judging from the pictures, people were dressed up in like Halloween-y type costumes. So there is stuff going on, and not unlike the convention itself, when you actually have appearances in events that you only know if you are following that particular vendor or that particular author or artist who say, I'm going to be doing an appearance at this booth. You sometimes actually don't know that it's happening, because the convention itself, I don't think they can probably announce every single thing that happens during the convention hours. There's just a lot.
Yeah, there's so much. I mean, like there was Sonic Boombox did a party on, I think it was Thursday and Friday, or Friday, Thursday. And there was also a cosplay cruise. So there was like one of those kind of Spirit cruise boats that goes around Manhattan.
Oh, that's cool.
There's just so much. I mean, if you want to come in and party your socks off during Comic-Con, you can. But just always know that the next day will be a little bit rough doing your commute in. Yeah.
So what was so what's this? So like you got social media, you got word of mouth, you got stuff being printed. What's like the best source of information for all this stuff? Like, is it all different? And like, it just sounds like it's it's hard enough for us to keep track of what's going on in Vegas, let alone something as big as New York City Comic-Con.
Yeah. Well, I would tell people who are coming to Comic-Con to kind of treat it like, I mean, in a way, like when you visit New York City, if you only have a few days, So, you can always do one of those big tour buses that bring you around and you see everything at once. And then you kind of pick the things that you're really interested in and you follow those things, or you check on those things. I think if you go into Comic-Con at New York thinking that you're going to be able to see everything, you'll probably be disappointed. But I always like to have one day where I just go in, walk around as much as I can, see what's going on. And then if I see something really cool, then I'm going to follow those Twitters, or I'm going to check their Instagram or Facebook posts, like for those 3 or 4 things that are really important, I don't want to miss kind of things.
That's precisely it. I mean, as far as like all the Trek stuff, for instance, thank goodness that we have, our own media sources, if you will. I mean, like the Trek News or the Trek Movie or Trek Core or anything, because they do come up with reports on what can be expected, especially for something as big as San Diego and New York Comic-Con. So that's how, like, for instance, there was a small talk Friday night at Barnes & Noble at Union Square with Ben Robinson, whom people might know, I hope, from Eagle Moss, and Todd Chernowski, who's he's a production designer for the first season of Discovery and for the entire first season of Picard. So it's not like we got some sort of like, oh, here's the behind the scenes. He couldn't obviously say much because there were limitations on things he could talk about. But it was great because he was just generally talking about certain approaches of how he and, for instance, John Eves, whom we know from the other Star Trek series, how they approached, the production for the brand new track that's being produced. It was a lovely thing. I was actually kind of shocked to see how few people showed up, but I'm assuming that it's this sort of thing where it's fairly niche, and unless you were following specific sources, you probably didn't even know that it was happening. So which is a pity, because this was it was a ticketed event, and at some point they kind of changed the rules because they wanted to attract the crowd, at least for people to show up and listen. But if you did buy a ticket, you actually got a nice little print and a gift bag with a magazine and a model. And depending on the level of a ticket, you would actually get one of the most recent releases, which was the Enterprise A. So it kind of, like Mike said, once you're actually interested in something, you kind of try to keep track of it, because that's how you'll know things are happening.
Yeah, it sounds like if I want to go, I better start planning now.
I don't think it hurts. One thing to remember, it's not all about money, but if you think about it, what does a one-day pass at Comic-Con cost now?
You know what? I want to say,
like 50?
I think it was 60. I want to say 60 or 65, and I can tell you in a moment. So let's continue talking, because I'm gonna look it up right now.
Yeah, no, because my point is kind of I like to be helpful to folks where I can. Sometimes folks are looking for like a Comic-Con exclusive, or they would like my help to get an autograph or something. But if it does cost $60 to go for one day, and a convention is about 8 hours, 1 hour is about $7.50 essentially, so $7 or $8. So like you do kind of want to plan, because kind of time is money. So like if you're like me and you're not careful and you oversleep, you've lost half of your day. You've lost half the value of that ticket. So I don't want you to stress out. Don't like freak out now and you'll be like, Michael, I don't have time to talk. I got to get to the vendor's room, but it's good to really have a general idea of how you want to spend that time. Yeah. Because like Vegas, it's not going to happen again for another year. So definitely planning is good.
Just to butt in is that I always say preparation is key. Is that try to find out, because New York Comic-Con happens to have a pretty convoluted ticketing system. So before you even start thinking, what am I going to do on the floor once I get there, you actually have to figure out how you're going to get there in terms of actual admission. Just briefly to say, before you even can buy a ticket, which is a pain. You can spend hours literally in the online queue. You also have to be fan verified. They will open it next spring, early summer. So basically you create an account. And then if you are lucky and you do manage to buy a badge, you basically connect that badge to your account, and then there you go. That's
so can you go into that a bit more? So I remember, because every year since I've heard about San Diego Comic-Con. I try to get in, and I never wake up in enough time, and I don't get a ticket, and that's okay because I think it's too big. But I remember this discussion though when we first talked about New York City Comic-Con, and they had just started. Like, it hasn't been long that they've started the whole fan verification and all that stuff, isn't it?
2016, I believe. Yeah. So
and you know they do. I mean, some of that, and they're not completely stopping scalping, but because there is a lot of that goes on, unfortunately. And I think that was done in part as an effort to curb it.
Yeah.
I will tell you that one very successful method that a friend of mine uses, and she has never had a problem getting a ticket, is basically she gets together with a group of like 5 or 6 really close friends who all trust each other. And the day that tickets come open, everyone gets online, and the first person through the queue buys for everyone. Yeah. And then you just like PayPal that person or Venmo. So again, it's important, you know, to do that with people that you trust. But she's super organized. She's got an Excel sheet. She's got everyone's name in it, everyone's PayPal account, what days they want, and the first person through just buys for everyone. And, you know, and as long as you have a fan verified profile, you can always get a ticket later.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. As long as everyone is fan verified, because I usually buy tickets for our little group, so me and 2 of my friends. And once I actually have the ticket, I have to assign these badges to them, and I would not be able to do that unless they were fan verified themselves. So, like I said, it's all this. It's like a very bureaucratical way, as opposed to a typical convention where it's like, okay, one Saturday pass, buy. No, New York Comic Con, unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. It's become pretty complicated. Going back to when we were talking about the pricing, so this year's Saturday badge was $55, and then service fee $2, sales tax, and I actually don't know. Oh, I know what this is. And the shipping, which they changed this year, which caused quite a bit of an uproar. But there have been issues with stolen badges in the past. So now New York Comic Con ships only priority mail. So in my case, it was $11.50. So total for Saturday came out to $73 plus.
And is there a like a will call, or do you have to get it mailed?
You can choose will call, but it's generally recommended that you don't. Simply because it's going to be a whole lot of people. All the international fans have to do will call. They can't have the badges sent to them. So that already, you guaranteed there's going to be a line there. If you have actually multiple orders, they will refund you, because it just so happened that this year I bought the Sunday tickets, and then I managed to get a Saturday badge. So technically I had 2 badges coming my way. So I paid $23 in shipping, as horrendous as it sounds. And then just literally about a week ago, I got an email saying, okay, here's a refund for $11.50, because they sent everything at the same time.
Oh, well, that's nice.
Yeah, it was very decent of them.
So what else do we what else is on our list?
I was curious to know, as far as the vendor whole experience for you, Mike, did you get any of the exclusives? I don't know if it's me, but despite of all this track visibility, it seemed like there were very few track exclusives this year.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I did see Eagle Moss had the Defiant, the Cloak Defiant was there. You know, there in terms of exclusives, I did not go out and really look for a lot. I did see some cool Trek things. There was an artist there, Sienna Morris, and someone saw me in my Discovery costume who was working for her, and she like stopped me and she's like, you got to check this out. And I ended up buying it, but it was a print of the Star Trek Next Generation communicator badge. But the way that she does her art is by using numbers. And so it is actually, it's called the Prime Directive, and she basically used ascending and non-repeating prime numbers to create this. So I'll have to send you a picture of it. Yeah, so there's some neat Star Trek stuff out there. A friend of mine who's an author, you know, I always try and make it a point to see her there, Nicolene Evans. But yeah, I didn't get through as much of the vendor room as I really wanted to. I mean, literally the whole northern half, I never got through. Anything north of the Marvel area, I didn't get to. Unfortunately. So
I managed to do most of the hall. I have to admit, I almost never venture into the strict Comic-Con, which is all the way to the north now, simply because I'm, you know, the irony, you know, it is a Comic-Con. This is what everything is started from, but I'm not that much into actual comics. And it is specific to people who actually do, you know, purchase the vintage issues, or perhaps there are some swaps going on there. I'm not sure. So basically everything from where they have the publishers area and then onwards, I did manage to go through every single aisle, and I mean, I did get stuck about 3 or 4 times in that foot traffic that we discussed before. But that's why I was like, you know what, I'm not quite seeing as many, you know, like I know one year we had Patches, and I think IDW had something, and Hallmark had something. So this year we did have it. I mean, Hallmark had it. Was not New York Comic Con specific. It was that ISS Enterprise ornament. Eagle Moss had for the first time. I mean, this was New York Comic Con specific, but otherwise there wasn't actually much else, which is not taking away from the experience at all. I mean, it would have been probably way too greedy to expect that. Okay, and vendors have to provide more track this time around. I mean, between the transporter experience and we didn't even mention the Star Trek universe. Well, not just Star Trek booth. It was a Star Trek universe booth they had some brand new T-shirts, which seemed to me mostly were TNG based, because I'm assuming because of Picard. But the fun thing was that they had this large glass cases with costumes from Discovery and from Picard, the actual screen used pieces. So that was very fun to see. It was very unexpected.
And that's different than what maybe they would have brought over to Vegas, because at Vegas we had that Picard exhibit, but I can't imagine that they replicated that.
No, yeah.
Okay, I guess we covered most of the stuff, the bulk of the meat of the thing, so to speak, the meat of New York Comic Con. So any last minute thoughts? Let's kind of summarize what really stood out for you, Mike. Any hopes for next year? I mean, next 2020 is going to be even more track, as we know.
Yeah, again, for me, I think the things that I really enjoy are personal connections and making new friends. And you got to be quick about it at New York Comic Con, because people are moving very fast. But just really connecting with a lot of new friends who are awesome at costuming and love it just as much as we do. The professional stuff is great. If you're in an industry or you're a podcaster or a writer, being able to connect with someone from the brand is awesome. And having that personal interaction. And then I think just the diversity of things. I love Star Trek, absolutely, hands down. You guys know that. But if you like other things too, if you like other sci-fi, other comics, this is a chance to kind of touch all of that. So the one piece of advice I would leave folks with is while getting rest and eating is important during the convention, I strongly recommend that you go into the convention as well rested as possible. That's my one piece of advice that I've learned from experience.
That's very good advice.
No, absolutely. Because until you experience it, you kind of don't quite have a grasp of just how tiring the experience is. Especially like it sort of felt this way this year, precisely because things are a little bit tighter because of construction, and well, the attendance is growing. I have a feeling that there were more people this year than last year. Well, all the franchises that are still popular and the ones that are becoming popular again, hello, Star Trek, definitely attract more and more people every year. That's for sure. So for me, that was probably the biggest thing this year. I just loved the fact that Star Trek became, again, so visible in pop culture in general. That was the greatest part. And to be a part of it, I mean, to be actually there, experience it live, that's just indescribable.
Yeah. So for me, I wasn't there, and I'm gonna try not to be very jealous as I was this whole thing. But I will tell you, I felt like I was there because of, and I'm in IT and I'm in technology, so I'm gonna rag on my industry and say, I mean, the technology has allowed me to become a part of something I was not, a part of, right? So I got to kind of see the excitement along with you guys that were there, and but I think if I were to plan on going, it really would be about the social connection. So I would go and make sure I made it to Looney's when everybody was there, kind of stuff. Absolutely. and not necessarily for me, it's even the other conventions, it's one or two panels that are gotta do because they're there, but I would probably spend most of my time in the cosplay area and in the vendor hall, because that's where you kind of meet up those people, and you got 3 seconds to breathe, as opposed to you can't talk when you're in a panel, right? Well, some people do, and we don't like that.
Yeah.
But I feel like what I like about New York City Comic Con more than San Diego is that it just seems it may not make sense, but from an outsider looking in, it seems more intimate in terms of feeling a part of it. Like where San Diego Comic-Con seems more commercial, New York City Comic-Con seems a little like,
No.
and maybe because I'm from the area, I don't know.
Yeah, that could be it, because you probably you recognize the names and the views,
the names and the people
sides, yes.
and the locations, right?
Yeah, but no, it's no, I would never call New York Comic-Con intimate or it's.
You can have personal
It's
moments with
commercialism.
people, but it will be in a sea of a lot of other people.
So I will say, I say I feel more connected probably because I knew more people there than at San Diego Comic-Con.
That's exactly. Well, that's another huge boon as far as the social media is concerned, is that now that we've met all these people and we keep meeting each other at these conventions, it makes the convention experience that much more fun. I mean, this has been discussed ad nauseum across all the different podcasts, is that precisely because there were people that you knew. I knew that there were people that I know there. So I knew, like, if anything happens, I can always say, where are all the, anybody wants to meet up for coffee? And it would happen, because it's great that person is there and we're friends through Star Trek. So, yeah.
That sounds really good. So, Marina, I think on that note, we should kind of do we close down? I feel like we shouldn't, but I think we need to.
Yes, absolutely. So, Mike, where can people find you online?
Well, the easiest place to find me on Instagram is Michael's Cosplay 1, and you can also check out our podcast. Follow us on Twitter at SpaceBetweenPod.
All right, Jesse, where can people find you online?
I am Outrageous Okendo on Twitter and Instagram. That's OUTRAJESOKENDO, and that's Instagram and Twitter. You can also find me on Facebook on the unofficial Star Trek Las Vegas group, or just by my name, Jesse Okendo.
All right, and
what about you?
Same thing. You can find me on Facebook, Marina Kravchuk. Same thing through a whole variety of Star Trek groups that we now have on Facebook. You can also find me on Twitter and on Instagram at Dracorex, DRAKKOREX. And of course, you can find Shoreleaf both on Facebook, full name Shoreleaf, your Star Trek Convention Community Podcast, and on Twitter at Shoreleaf. And I guess that brings this episode to an end.
That's fantastic. Thanks, everyone. This was great. And I just hope everybody lives long and prospers.
Yes. Thank you for coming, Mike. Thanks. Great to have this discussion.
Wonderful. Thanks for having me. Peace and long life.
Thanks.
All right. Keep on tracking, everyone.